The cameras were already rolling when Mayor Clayton Briggs stepped onto Eleanor Whitfield's porch, polished shoes against weathered wood that had held 3 generations of her family. He carried a folded zoning notice like it was a victory ribbon. Behind him stood 2 council members, a local reporter, and a small crowd drawn by curiosity. In front of him stood Marcus Reed, quiet, steady, dressed in worn boots and a pressed but faded button-down. One hand rested gently on Mrs. Whitfield's trembling shoulder. The mayor glanced at Marcus and smirked. "And you are, what exactly? Legal counsel? Investor?" His eyes drifted over Marcus's clothes. "Doesn't look like it." A few uneasy laughs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Whitfield clutched her housecoat tighter. The mayor continued, voice loud for the cameras. "Mom, I'd be careful. Grief makes people vulnerable. Some folks see opportunity." The implication hung heavy. Marcus said nothing. He simply took the notice, folded it once, twice, and handed it back to her. "Mom, we'll handle this the right way." The mayor chuckled. "You? Handle it." 6 months later, that same mayor would be standing in town hall staring at a document with Marcus's name on it. Marcus Reed had never cared much for appearances. After 20 years in military logistics, moving supplies through war zones, where one delayed shipment could cost lives, he learned that quiet competence mattered more than noise. When he left the service, he didn't chase spotlight contracts or flashy developments. Instead, he built a modest but powerful investment firm focused on one thing: preserving historically Black-owned properties in towns that had nearly forgotten their own foundations. He returned home only after his mother passed. The funeral was small. The grief was not. Standing beside the fresh red clay at her gravesite, he made a promise she would have understood without explanation. He would look after the people who once looked after her. Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield had been one of them: childhood friend, church usher, keeper of neighborhood stories, the kind of woman who baked pies for every graduation and sat front row at every funeral. Marcus drove an old pickup that rattled at stoplights. He paid for groceries in cash. He kept his documents in a worn leather folder that looked older than it was. And every Sunday afternoon, he sat with Mrs. Whitfield on that porch, listening more than speaking. What most people didn't see was the portfolio behind that quiet life. Over the past year, Marcus had been steadily purchasing distressed municipal bonds and small parcels tied to the town's redevelopment plan, especially those connected to town hall. The mayor assumed Marcus was just another outsider. That assumption would cost him everything. Mayor Briggs called it revitalization. Glossy brochures, artist renderings of sleek storefronts and luxury lofts. He spoke about progress like it was a moral duty, something only small-minded people would resist. What he didn't highlight was the fine print eminent domain clauses tucked neatly beneath promises of economic growth. 3 elderly homeowners received notices within weeks. Each property sat along the proposed redevelopment corridor. Mrs. Whitfield's house, perched on the corner, lot closest to town hall, was the keystone. At public meetings, the mayor's tone carried a practiced patience. "We can't let a few old houses block the future," he joked one evening, smiling as some in the audience shifted uncomfortably. "Sentiment doesn't build tax revenue." He adjusted his gold cufflinks as he spoke, a subtle ritual whenever he dismissed opposition. The gesture became a polished, rehearsed final. Marcus attended every meeting. Same seat, same worn folder. He never approached the microphone, never argued. He just wrote notes in steady, deliberate strokes. People noticed. They also noticed who didn't speak up: the pastor who avoided eye contact, the shop owner who relied on city permits, the retired teacher who whispered concerns but never raised her hand. Fear has a way of sounding like silence. The mayor mistook that silence for agreement. But the widow's porch wasn't just another property. It was the one piece the mayor couldn't afford to lose. The meeting took place in a modest office 2 counties over, far from campaign banners and town gossip. Marcus sat across from a state-level auditor and a historic preservation attorney, his worn leather folder resting on the desk between them. Inside that folder wasn't sentiment. It was structure, The auditor slid a document forward. "The redevelopment bond is leveraged against a municipal asset," she said carefully. "Town Hall." Marcus nodded. He already knew. Mayor Briggs had pushed the council to approve a high-risk bond package to fund the revitalization project. On paper, it looked ambitious. Behind the numbers, it was fragile. If projected revenues didn't materialize, the town would default. And default meant collateral. Over the past year, through a quiet holding company that never carried his name publicly, Marcus had been purchasing distressed shares of that very bond, small amounts at first, then more as skepticism grew among early investors. No headlines, no announcements, just signatures and wire transfers. He wasn't attacking the mayor. He wasn't seeking revenge for a porch-side insult. He was preparing. The attorney tapped the final page. If the mayor defaulted, control wouldn't go to the bank. It would go to the majority bondholder. Marcus closed the folder slowly. Outside, the town carried on, unaware that its future rested not in speeches but in paperwork. And the majority bondholder? It wasn't who the mayor thought. The annual town festival arrived with bright tents, barbecue smoke, and a stage set up in front of Town Hall. Families gathered with lemonade and lawn chairs, eager for music and distraction. Mayor Briggs took the microphone just before sunset, basking in applause that felt, to him, like proof of progress. He thanked sponsors, developers, visionaries willing to invest in our future. Then his gaze drifted toward the edge of the crowd where Marcus stood beside Mrs. Whitfield, holding 2 paper plates. "We appreciate investors who actually contribute," the mayor continued smoothly, his eyes fixed on Marcus, "not porch sitters." A few people laughed. Most didn't. Marcus didn't flinch. He handed Mrs. Whitfield her plate before answering, voice calm but steady. "Contribution doesn't always look loud." The words weren't sharp. They weren't defensive. They simply landed. The mayor smirked, adjusting his gold cufflinks, as if brushing off dust. To him, it was another easy win, another reminder of who held the microphone. But this time, the audience felt something shift. Because while the mayor performed, Marcus observed. While the mayor mocked, Marcus measured. And the truth sat quietly between them like an unopened letter. Why didn't Marcus push back harder? Why didn't he expose what he knew? He didn't fight back because he didn't need to. By late autumn, the banners promoting revitalization had begun to fade in the sun. Then the market shifted. Interest rates climbed. Outside investors pulled back. The sleek redevelopment project that once looked inevitable slowed to a crawl. Contractors stopped showing up. Steel deliveries stalled. Rumors spread that invoices hadn't been paid in weeks. At Town Hall, doors that once stayed open for ribbon cuttings were suddenly closed for private sessions. Inside, voices rose behind frosted glass. The mayor's confident baritone sharpened into clipped frustration during late-night phone calls. Then the bond payment came due. Marcus received the notice in a plain envelope, forwarded through his holding company. Default declared. Terms activated. He read it once, then again, his expression unchanged. Across town, Mayor Briggs sat alone in his office. For the first time, the gold cufflinks came off. He placed them carefully on his desk, then rubbed his temples, as if pressure alone could reverse numbers on a spreadsheet. What he had leveraged for progress was now leverage against him. Under the bond agreement, the controlling bondholder held rights to the collateral asset in the event of default. That asset was Town Hall. An emergency council meeting was announced for Thursday evening. No agenda details. Just urgency. By sundown, the town sensed something larger than a delayed project. The foundation wasn't just cracked. It was giving way. By the time the council chamber doors closed, every seat was filled, and people lined the walls. The air felt heavy like the pause before a summer storm. Mayor Briggs stood at the podium, tie perfectly straight, voice measured. "There's been a temporary setback," he began, "but I assure you, our administration has everything under control." A murmur moved through the room. Then the state auditor, seated near the front, rose without waiting to be recognized. Her tone was calm, almost gentle. "The bond has officially defaulted as of this afternoon." Under the terms approved by this council, collateral provisions are now in effect. The room stilled. A suited legal representative stepped forward, briefcase in hand. Control of the municipal asset tied to the bond transfers to the majority bondholder pending restructuring. Mayor Briggs blinked. And who exactly is that? In the third row, Marcus stood. It wasn't dramatic. No rush. No raised voice. Just the quiet scrape of a chair against wood. A ripple of whispers spread as he walked down the aisle, leather folder tucked beneath his arm. When he reached the front, he opened it with steady hands and passed a document to the clerk. Marcus Reed Holdings. The attorney read aloud. The mayor's color drained. That's not possible. Marcus finally faced him. It is. He turned to the council. I never wanted this building. I just wanted fairness. He outlined the restructuring terms with clarity born of preparation. Mrs. Whitfield's home and all pending senior properties would be protected. Eminent domain actions halted. An independent ethics review initiated before any future redevelopment. For a moment, silence, then someone clapped. Slowly at first. Then others joined. The sound rose, filling the chamber not with chaos but with release. Justice hadn't shouted. It had simply stood up. 6 months after the cameras captured his smirk, Clayton Briggs stood outside Town Hall without an audience. No microphones, no polished speeches. Just a cardboard box tucked under his arm and the quiet understanding that power, once misused, does not linger. Across town, the same porch that had witnessed humiliation now held something different. Marcus sat beside Mrs. Whitfield on a mild Sunday afternoon, the wood warm beneath them. Only this time, neighbors filled the yard, not whispering in fear, but bringing sweet tea, folding chairs, and gratitude that felt almost sacred. Children played near the steps, once threatened by legal notices. The house hadn't changed. The paint still peeled in places. The screen door still creaked. But the weight had lifted. Mrs. Whitfield studied Marcus with soft eyes. Your mother would be proud, she said. He looked out at the gathering, at the ordinary beauty of people unafraid in their own neighborhood. It was never about winning, he replied gently. It was about standing. And on that porch, dignity stood taller than ever. The ethics review moved quietly but thoroughly. Contracts were examined. Emails surfaced. Closed-door decisions were brought into open light. There were no dramatic raids, no shouting matches on courthouse steps, just steady documentation and facts that spoke for themselves. Within weeks, the pressure became undeniable. Mayor Briggs called a brief press conference on the town hall steps he once commanded so confidently. His statement was short, carefully worded, absent of apology but heavy with inevitability. He announced his resignation in the best interest of the town. Later that afternoon, alone in his office, he opened the top drawer of his desk. The gold cufflinks, polished, weighty, once adjusted like punctuation marks to his authority, rested in his palm. For a moment, he stared at them. Then he placed them inside the drawer and slid it shut. No revenge speech followed. No public humiliation, just consequence. Power had isolated him. Pride had convinced him he was untouchable. And when it fell away, there was no one left standing close. Meanwhile, the town began the slower, steadier work of rebuilding trust. Learning that leadership without humility is only performance.